In the 1950s, George Reeves embodied the Man of Steel in Superman's first television adaptation, from its gritty black and white beginnings to the kid-friendly color years. To this day, an entire generation reveres George as their Superman, while for others, the show remains an overlooked, underrated chapter in the character's history. On this podcast, we bring everyone together as we break down each episode of Adventures of Superman, examining it within the context of the series itself, as well as the larger Superman mythology. Welcome to another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Season 4, Episode 11, The Deadly Rock, is returning guest Rich Roney. Thank you for joining me once again to kick off the final 3 episodes of Season 4.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I was able to step away from these episodes for a while, and it was probably a good thing. I think the last thing we had discussed was Topsy-Turvy, and I think we had one of the shortest discussions on record.
Yes.
So this episode has intrigued me for multiple reasons, and I'm very happy to you let me discuss this with you.
No, absolutely. I've not had the benefit of stepping away, but I think that's probably a good thing. I have a little distance occasionally. So in this episode, Clark's old friend Gary Allen is mysteriously stricken by Kryptonite. This aired on June 2nd, 1956, written by Jackson Gillis, directed by Harry Gerstad. Our cast starting with Robert Lowery as Gary Allen. Now, famously, he starred as Batman in the second movie serial, the 1949 serial. So I think this is an episode of Adventures of Superman that has always stood out to people, present company included, because in a sense, it's like you're getting Superman and Batman on screen together. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I very much agree. This is probably our first celluloid version of Superman and Batman, world's finest.
Certainly on the small screen, yeah. Now, have you watched the Batman serials?
No.
I own them.
Get out.
They're on the shelf next to me. I have big podcasting plans that involve Batman for the future, and so I think it's only a matter of time before I actually crack it open and watch it. I haven't actually watched them yet, but I do own them. They're on my radar. But no, until that point, I mean, this is my experience with the actor Robert Lowery is as this character, Gary Allen. Another in a long line of these best friends of Clark who we've never seen before and will never see again.
Yeah. Yes.
We also have Stephen Jure as Professor Van Wyck, Jim Hayward as the baggage man, Vincent Perry as Doctor, as once again, this is seemingly Clark's doctor, or at least a doctor Clark knows.
But it wasn't the one from I Dream of Jeannie,
right?
You know?
Who helped him out, right, when he thought he was sleepwalking?
Yes.
Yeah. And then Bob Folk as Big Tom Rufus. So a few years ago now, you and I collaborated on an article for Dan Greenfield's website, 13th Dimension. We counted down our top 13 episodes of Adventures of Superman. And one of your picks, one of your contributions to the list was The Deadly Rock. So now, upon rewatch, upon revisitation, does it still occupy that sort of place for you when you look at the entirety of Adventures of Superman? Yes,
I'm still very fond of this. This episode intrigued me, right? And we've discussed this, more so in seasons 1 and 2. He had a friend, like he knew the guys over in Germany with that one thing.
Yeah, Colonel Redding.
Yeah. He had other friends. The guy in the wrestling, when they were taking that wrestling syndicate apart.
Oh, yeah, Sam.
So,
Candy
Myers. So this intrigued me. I enjoy the episode every bit as much this go around. I will say this time I focused a little bit more on lost potential.
Yeah.
I like this episode for multiple reasons. The one thing I'll say that I found most interesting was the character of Gary Allen. And I was disappointed because of such a lost potential. I mean, he had characteristics and attributes that were heroic or leadership-like, right? He came across as competent, effective, an investigator of types. The fact that he had such good characteristics and he was Clark's friend, Well, I thought, well, that's what you'd expect, like Bruce and Clark or Superman and Batman. So yeah, I enjoyed this episode.
On a positive note, I love the continuity, right? So there are direct references to season 2's Panic in the Sky and the Kryptonite asteroid that Superman destroyed. So I was very happy for that. And what's kind of interesting is it seems like Kryptonite is the main aspect of this series where they will actually adhere to continuity, because this is not the Superman week was another instance where they referred back to the defeat of Superman.
Oh, really?
And now here in the Deadly Rock, we refer back to Panic in the Sky. So at least with respect to Kryptonite, they're sticking to something, which I do appreciate. So that was cool. And the casting was great.
Can I interrupt? Other than this episode, the Deadly Rock referencing Panic in the Sky, and the other two episodes, were there any other instances where there was a reference back to a prior episode?
Oh, I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of any, but
so it's
don't
very,
hold me to that.
No.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing that to corner you. You just brought up, I didn't know about that second iteration.
Yeah.
It's super rare when they harken back to a previous episode. I can't think, absent these two, I can't think of any.
Well, it's interesting too, on the note of Kryptonite. So with the defeat of Superman in season 2, the bad guys who know about Kryptonite, they all die in a car crash. And Lois and Jimmy purposely don't report about the Kryptonite. So Kryptonite remains a secret. Then in Superman week in season 3, Jimmy is drugged and is forced to spill the beans about Kryptonite. But long story short, by the end of that episode, Superman is able to convince the bad guys that Kryptonite wasn't actually real. So he disabuses them of the notion that there's something that can hurt and kill him. This marks a departure, though, and it's not explicitly addressed in the episode, but as of the end of this episode, the bad guys know about Kryptonite and live. So, like I said, it's not addressed here, but this actually is a point of departure where, for the first time in the series now,
it's canon.
There are bad guys who are aware of the existence of this, who live past this episode.
Yeah.
So there's that. On the note of Kryptonite, though, two things. One, especially now that we're in the color era, why can't it be green? Like, because we see the Rock, a good shot of the Rock in the very opening scene of the episode where we have those gloved hands placing it in the box and then in the suitcase, and it looks gold.
Yeah.
Like metallic gold, which,
it looked like the same rock they used in Through the Time Barrier.
Yeah.
Maybe that at that point in time, it just translated better to I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm okay with that. The bigger problem I have, and I feel like this is a huge hole in this episode, it is never addressed why Kryptonite affected Gary Allen.
I agree. And driving over here today, because I watched this a couple of days ago, are there other human beings? I know to your credit, you're going to get in the beats of this thing. Why is he the only one? Are there other untapped humans who would likewise be affected? Or is Kryptonite so scarce, others would be? But there was something with that plane crash and maybe exposure to the elements from the asteroid.
Right. So that's the thing. There are numerous references made to the fact that Gary Allen was caught in a plane crash, I guess caused by the meteor shower when Superman destroyed the asteroid. And we, especially in 2025, can kind of fill in the blanks, right? I watched over 200 episodes, 10 years of Smallville. People were constantly affected by Kryptonite. So the notion that exposure to those meteor rocks in that plane crash changed Gary Allen somehow and made him susceptible, I can fill in those blanks. But putting this in 1956 terms, I feel like that it went unaddressed and it should have been accounted for. They only go so far as explaining, we'll get to it at the end, but that somehow when he was under the exposure to Kryptonite, it made him simultaneously weak, yet
and
also invulnerable.
Yeah.
So that it's really hard to square that. But I just felt like it would have taken next to nothing. Just a quick line like, oh, it must have been exposure in that plane crash that made me, that's it. That's all I need. So that kind of bummed me out. And then the last thing.
Can I offer this? The plane crash always kind of confused me. people die in plane crashes. People are crippled or hideously disfigured or injured. Maybe they're lose a leg or something. This guy got out unscathed. I mean, so I, in my mind, projected on, well, he must have crash landed the plane. Maybe he was the pilot, because clearly they didn't reference any other passengers.
Right.
So maybe he was alone in the plane. He was flying. He was in Africa. And then just maybe being ensnared, or all this radiation was around him. It had an effect on him. But I agree with you. I wish they would have, when he was at the doctor's office, I wish, or there was some summary. He spoke about what transpired with the plane crash, the circumstances, and maybe I was unconscious for hours as remnants of the asteroid settled with me, and maybe over time they just evaporated or something.
Yeah, so I really needed that accounted for. And then the last thing is, I agree with you. I think what little we see of Gary Allen's actual character was great. And it seems like he has attributes that you understand why he would be friends with Clark. It kills me that he ends up spending the entire climax unconscious.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why waste this actor and character? I mean, they could have done something where he has to pretend he's Superman, right? And he shows his bravery. Give this guy some agency. Give him something to do. He ends up being a prop. It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and to your point, and listen, I remember seeing him in Westerns with John Wayne. He was in a couple of other TV series himself where he was the star in the 50s. As you said, he did the Batman, the second serial. He's done other things. He was in episodes of Maverick. But to bring him in, and for the few seconds you see him, he seemed purposeful, effective, competent. I think they say, I picked it up this most recent watching, that he travels a lot and he does assignments for the government.
Yes.
Right? So what lost potential. They could have brought this guy back 2 or 3 times and said, where he was investigating something, Clark, I could use an extra set of eyes on this. Or, Clark, I'm in over my head. I could use some help. They had a great plot device to introduce some mystery or some challenge or some, I don't know what sort of, was he a CIA type? Was he espionage? Was he just an investigator like FBI? I don't know.
It's like, you go back to the Jet Ace episode from the black and white era with Chris White, Perry's nephew. That guy had something to do. And you get to that big climax. I don't know if you remember, but he has that knockdown, drag out brawl.
Yeah, right.
And Clark is holding everyone back. He's like, no,
let him have fun, Lois.
But it's like he got his moment. Yeah. And I feel like this character was denied that, like, kind of needlessly. I mean, I don't know how much I can really say about Gary Allen. He wanted a free meal. He mentioned that a few times. But yeah, it just
and he couldn't have been that good a friend. Clark forgot to pick him up. I'll send Jimmy out.
Well, also, now maybe this is getting nitpicky, but like when Gary's on the phone with Clark in the opening,
I've never felt better.
Well, but even before that, he's like, "Oh, I'm doing well. Well, I was in a plane crash, but I'm okay." It's like, I guess they don't have that much contact, but that seems like a big thing to to just kind of be sprinkling in there. But I don't know. So I feel like there was a huge missed opportunity, and it's one of those things. I think historically, I have held up this episode in higher regard as well. But upon rewatch, and there was yet another viewing that I had of this because I joined our pal Tyler on the Krypton Report a while back, and we talked about kind of a selection of Reeves episodes. And one of the ones he singled out was this one. And, watching it then yet again, and then watching it one more time for this, I was just kind of struck more by, I think we hold up this episode because it's like, it's cool casting and it's Kryptonite and it's like a weird use of Kryptonite. Right. But that aside, I think there's a lot that's kind of just missing here. And I just feel like they had the ingredients and they just left a lot on the table. So I know a lot of that is sort of more on the negative side. Overall, I did enjoy it, but I was just kind of baffled by some of those choices.
Same here. You used the phraseology, they left stuff on the table. To me, it was like unfulfilled potential. They had potential they didn't tap into.
Single Bound is a new podcast hosted by married couple Amy and Logan as they review single issues of comics. And if the title makes you think of Superman, you're not alone, as the Man of Steel is a regular topic of discussion. Listen and subscribe to Single Bound on Spotify and YouTube. Ever wonder what would happen if a person who knew barely anything about comics decided to absorb hundreds of Superman stories? Robbo is that kind of person, and that's exactly what he's doing on a new show called This Podcast Will Never Die. Listen and subscribe today. Fat Moose Comics, established in 1982, is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Moose has that rare old-school comic shop feel and camaraderie, yet also remains a welcoming space for new fans. Visit them in Whippany or reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. Whether you're an independent filmmaker or you just love movies, don't miss these New Jersey film festivals. Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, and Round Reel in Bloomfield. Submission information for filmmakers can be found at filmfreeway.com. If you have children and are looking for a family-friendly store, look no further than Aw Yeah Comics. Visit one of their 3 locations, Harrison, New York, Muncie, Indiana, or Skokie, Illinois, and check out awyeahcomics.com for more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Aw yeah! My love of the TV series Smallville is well documented, and there's one rewatch podcast that's always at the top of my queue. Zach Moore's Always Hold On to Smallville, which continues with more great Smallville and Superman talk now that their series rewatch has concluded. Listen wherever you get podcasts. Okay, so we'll go through our beat by beat here. So we already talked about those gloved hands placing the gold metallic rock inside the suitcase. At the Metropolis airport, Gary Allen arrives and calls old pal Clark Kent as he waits for his luggage, telling Clark he's doing well, except for that plane crash in Africa a while back, but he's okay now.
He never felt better.
Never felt better. Clark was due to pick up Gary for lunch, but sent young Olsen in his place. As the baggage handler places the heavy suitcase from the opening scene near Gary, Gary becomes disoriented and passes out. Clark arrives moments later, right before Jimmy, and revives Gary. Gary retraces his steps and once again feels sick near the baggage area, but this time Clark does too. I feel like it gets a little lost in the shuffle, and Jack Larson is blocking George Reeves in this scene, but there's a part where Clark tells Jimmy to take Gary away, and then Jimmy is still waiting for Clark, and Clark
Can you help me?
But Clark is like, do as I tell you. I like that little bit there. But that's our opening. And then after they clear out, Professor Van Wyck from Africa claims the bag.
Yeah.
We'll have more with Van Wyck, but what's your read on him overall?
Boy, I did not like him. And because he was so silly and such a goofball.
Yeah.
Right? He reminded me of the voice coach from The Face and the Voice. Was it Shakespeare or something like that? I just didn't care for this guy as a crazy scientist.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Okay, so at Clark's doctor's office, we don't get the background on this, but the doctor Clark recommends. The doctor explains that Gary's blood work appears to show traces of metallic radiation of unearthly origin. Gary recounts that his African plane crash occurred during the meteor shower caused when Superman shattered the asteroid in Season 2's Panic in the Sky. The word Kryptonite is on the tip of Jimmy's tongue, but Clark silences him and reveals that customs records show the arrival of Professor Van Wyck from Africa. All right, so Clark has made the connection. Yeah, this plane crash in Africa. Now there's this guy from Africa, and starting to put it together. Anything else about this kind of opening bit that stood out to you?
No, the most interesting thing was up through that point when they're in the doctor's office, and Lowery's all the way over on the left-hand side, and Clark and Jimmy are sitting on the other side of the room, and Clark whisks Jimmy outside. Up till that point, everything Jimmy said, Clark was stomping on.
Yes.
Get him over there, or do as I tell you, Jimmy, So Jimmy, this was one rare instance where Clark, I think, was pretty impatient and, not letting Jimmy speak really, or, expand on stuff.
Yes. And Jimmy not reading the room, not taking any of the cues. He just keeps trying. So this next scene here, we get to Rufus's house. This is the same set as the girl who hired Superman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so very familiar surroundings. We follow Van Wyck to the home of Mr. Rufus, where he reveals his background in plantations, astrology, geology, money, no money. He explains at great length that he spied Superman weakening from the asteroid with his telescope and recovered one of the meteors when it landed in Africa.
That scene annoyed me.
Same.
I mean, he's in Africa. How powerful was this telescope? You get the impression it's like maybe 2 feet long.
Yeah.
How could he see Superman? Yeah. When we watched that episode and we discussed it, you're at the Griffith Observatory, or the Griffin Observatory in Los Angeles. How powerful was Van Wyck's telescope? I didn't care for this character.
I didn't care for the character. I didn't care for this scene. I just felt like it went on forever to give us information that we mostly already had, and that even the other character had. They're like, we read your letter. It's like talk about filler. This really felt like. And then ultimately, he agrees to let Rufus kill Superman with the rock for $8 million. Later in the episode, Rufus will only be willing to pay him $1 million.
Now, I did think, you know the names better than I, the assistant Snorkel.
Yeah.
Right? He was the smartest guy in the room.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, he knew better than the boss. There were multiple times where he had to, boss, maybe you should do this.
Yeah. Science stuff. Oh, yeah. This next bit was interesting. Rufus directs Van Wyck and his underling to stake out the Daily Planet, as Superman is bound to show up there soon.
This is another scene I despise.
Well, so this is interesting to me. Maybe we had the same thought, but when Rufus said, like, go to the Daily Planet, Superman will probably show up there, I assumed they meant like Superman will fly in, because we have seen instances where Superman himself visits. But no, they have seemingly deduced that Superman in his civilian secret identity works there, because when we get to the next scene here, Van Wyck poses as a shoe shine and exposes everyone who walks by to the rock. Yes. Which also, he's lifting the flap on the box, which is like, you don't even need to do that, because clearly even in a box in a suitcase, it's affecting, I know, but they wanted to make more of a show of it, I guess.
I got pissed at Perry. Perry walks out into the public hallway and engages in this ludicrous, trivial discussion with Van Wyck, who's posing as the shoe shine guy. Snorkel's leaning against the wall, and Perry's just oblivious. Where are my reporters?
Wait, doesn't he say something like, I don't even know if I'll have time for a bath this week, let alone a shoe shine, right? Something like that?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have that. So he's exposing everyone to the rock to no avail until he encounters Gary Allen getting off the elevator, who once again collapses instantly. And that's pretty much it for him for the episode.
Well, he does have like a 30-second chat at the end.
At the very end, yeah. Jimmy, meanwhile, tells Lois that a cab driver told him where he dropped off Van Wyck. As they take off, Lois directs Jimmy not to call the police. Now, we'll get to it, but Jimmy thankfully doesn't listen and actually displays a bit of forethought and savvy, which I really appreciated. Because I'm thinking, like, Lois, what? You guys get captured every episode. What makes you think this is going to be different?
Yeah. Look at Clark Kent Outlaw. You went to check on Clark, you got captured. Yeah. How many times? I didn't see it, but the girl who hired Superman.
Yeah. Yes.
There's kind of like it's like almost check the box.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think they would just have the police on standby anytime they do anything. So the notion that she's like, don't call them. So I like Jimmy in this for sure. All right. At Rufus's house, Gary is tied up and unconscious, but neither a needle nor bullets. I was
going to say, as I ponder it literally this second, we know that wasn't Lois's thought pattern. Because she was more like, we can get, if they come in with the sirens blaring, we're not going to
get our story.
Well, you might get a bigger story.
Yeah.
But two, if she had said something like, no, Jimmy, not now. We don't have any proof they've done anything. Or if it was more conceptual or unproven. If she had said that, Jimmy, why don't we go out there and size it up first?
No, that's a great point. Because at this stage, yeah, they don't know that Van Wyck is up to anything nefarious per se. So yes, I think if Lois had framed it more as, we don't have any proof, like we need to investigate more. But she framed it as like they'll get in our way.
Yeah. They'll ruin it, or their sirens will alert them to everything going on.
Agreed. All right, at Rufus's house, Gary is tied up and unconscious, but neither a needle nor bullets can pierce his skin. Superman watches rather helplessly from outside the window as they test Gary, and as Lois and Jim show up and get captured. Rufus starts a countdown that will blow the whole place, at which Van Wyck expresses some regret, but still goes along. That was interesting that he had a little something there.
Yeah.
Not much is really done with it, but it was,
I'm so disappointed. I mean, I'm annoyed with the casting and the development of the person in the story. I just didn't care for Van Wyck in this silly little voice and no money.
No money. Yeah. I don't know. I lost patience with Superman at that window.
Well, didn't they, at one point he tried to like push
Yeah.
and then it gave the impression the radiation.
Yeah. I mean, yes, there was at least that, but I just felt like, gotta do something, man. I mean, I don't know. Call the police. It's fine. He'll eventually take that action, but I just felt like we were lingering on him at that window for like powerless. A long time.
Yeah.
And
apparently the bad guys don't look out the very window behind Gary Allen.
I know, you would think a guy in a red and blue costume
there must have been a reflection on the inside.
Even out of the corner of your eye. Like that's something that you probably spot.
That big red shirt.
Finally, Superman procures a weed burner from the shed, smashes the window, directs Jimmy to kick the kryptonite into the fireplace, and then sets it ablaze. Thankfully, Jimmy had also called Henderson over Lois's directive to the contrary, and the bad guys are nabbed off screen. Kudos to Jimmy and kudos to Jack Larson. He did that hopping and kicking while tied to a chair.
Yeah, he did do a good job. This reminded me of the chairs that were that Clark bought in Clark Kent Outlaw for Perry. Hey, let's burn these things, right?
Yeah.
But Jimmy did do a good job kind of bouncing across the room to the fireplace, kicking it in. And hey, good thing Clark found that that flame thrower. Because at first I thought, well, why didn't he use his heat vision?
Yep.
I mean, I thought that would have been, but maybe they were trying to portray that his powers were neutralized so much.
Yeah, you know what? For all the things, I'm actually okay with that because I can buy like maybe that, right? Because at this point, his X-ray vision can essentially function like heat vision. But yeah, maybe it can't work on the kryptonite itself. Right? Now, you could argue, well, like why couldn't he use it to burn up whatever the kryptonite was in? But I mean, I think to your point, the fact that when he even raises his arms outside that window, he like winces in pain. Yeah, I think his powers were neutralized to that degree. So that aspect of it I was okay with. I felt like that tracked well enough. Later, Gary,
The other thing, I have never really seen flame burn rock. Not that I've been looking for it, but okay, we're going to go with it that weed killer flamethrower had enough intensity of heat to at least burn the radiation. Maybe it just burnt the radiation off.
Maybe, because there is another line, if I'm not mistaken, maybe it's Van Wyck when he's talking about recovering the samples. Like most of the kryptonite samples had burned up in that crash by the time he got there, but that was what was left.
Oh, okay,
so
I missed that.
They do establish that heat has this effect. So again, I'll go with that. I have, I have a lot of problems, but where we can sort of finesse it, we will. Later, Gary figures Superman's explanation was right, that somehow the kryptonite made him simultaneously weak and invulnerable. Though, as we had discussed earlier, it's never explained why kryptonite affected a human at all. Clark shows up to finally take Gary to lunch. That's our episode, The Deadly Rock. Anything else you want to say before we give our rating?
I'll just try to hit it real crisp. There were 4 key points in this one that stood out to me. One, I really liked the character of Gary Allen, his character, his background, his appearance, the way he conducted himself. For the little moments of time he was able to be walking around and speaking. So the backstory, that he was really a government investigator of some type. I liked that backstory. It gave him, like you said, agency and purpose. I liked it that he was a friend of Clark's. I really liked that. I wish they could have worked more of that in. I loved the tie-in to Panic in the Sky. You mentioned the Superman week, but for me, this is the only thing I could think of where they have one episode harken right back to a previous episode in a very consistent manner. So the character of Gary Allen, the connection to Panic in the Sky, I really liked those 2 things. Again, I used the phrase earlier, lost potential. I wish they would have just brought this character back for another episode or 2 where in his role as an investigator, he said, hey, Clark, I need some help. I'm getting in too deep on this. Or you've done work. There's a gang in this town. I thought, what lost potential? Because this guy could have initiated plot points and stories. So those are the four takeaways I had from this.
Right on. No, I echo all of that. All right. So on a scale of 1 to 5, Great Caesar's Ghost, how many are we giving The Deadly Rock?
4.
4. All right. I'm close. I'm going to go 3.5. To be honest, I was initially thinking 3, but I'll go 3.5. I do feel like that's grading it on a little bit of a curve because I think they left a lot on the table. And I think all of us, ourselves included, I think we hold it up a little bit more for the setup and what it could have done versus what it actually did. But it's an interesting one. And this is like going back to that list. I mean, I think if I were to put together, especially of the color episodes, like ones that you really would want to make sure you check out, even with its limitations, this is one. So I'm going to go 3.5 on this one. All right, man. Thank you so much. You'll be back next week for The Phantom Ring.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, audience. Make sure you come back next time. Until then, as always, only Superman can do super things. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. Another way to support the show and receive exclusive content, including the spin-off podcast Beyond Metropolis, is by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please subscribe, rate, and review today via your podcast platform of choice, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. Flat Squirrel Podcasts is also home to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a long-running weekly series mining Superman's vast mythology across time and media. Subscribe today. Another exciting episode is a Flat Squirrel production. Key art by Greg Schiegel and theme music by Dan Pritchard.